Hello and hope you are doing well. Welcome to a Coder's Journey. This is the first episode of this new series where we are going to explore SQL Server triggers from the ground up. Since this is the starting point of this series, we are going to focus on building a solid foundation and understanding what triggers are and why they exist. And as we move forward in the upcoming episode, we will gradually build on those concepts. So make sure you follow along step by step as each episode connects to the next. Before continuing with this series, you should already feel comfortable working with SQL Server at at least an intermediate level. So I'm not going to spend much time covering absolute beginner topics or explaining very basic database concepts. So if at any point this tutorial feels a bit overwhelming, that is usually a sign that you may need to strengthen some foundational SQL Server knowledge before continuing further. Throughout the series, I will mainly be working inside SQL Server Management Studio, and I will also provide all of the queries and commands used during each episode for you to download using the link that I'm going to put in the description. So let's get started by talking about a trigger. So I'm going to put this here. What is a trigger? So simply put, a trigger is a piece of SQL code that runs automatically in response to a database event. So this is very important because this kind of makes triggers kind of different from other similar concepts. In SQL Server, triggers are generally divided into two main categories. You've got DML triggers and DDL triggers. So DDL. So in this series, we're gonna focus entirely on DML triggers because these are the types of triggers developers work with most often in application development. DML, of course, stands for Data Manipulation Language, and these triggers execute whenever the data inside of a table changes. So whenever operations such as insert, update, delete occur, the trigger can automatically run additional logic in response to those events. One important thing to understand is that DML triggers are attached directly to the table on which they are created. That means that the trigger becomes, associated with that specific table and automatically reacts whenever, changes happen there. DML triggers are commonly used for things such as audit logging, enforcing business rules, validating data, or performing side effects after a data modification occurs. For example, a trigger might automatically write information into an audit table whenever someone changes important data inside of the database. In some systems, triggers may also be used for things like notifications or synchronization logic. So we also have another category, as I talked about this, DDL. So DDL stands for Data Definition Language. Unlike DML triggers, which react to data changes, DDL triggers react to structural, changes made to the database itself. For example, operations such as create table, alter table, drop table, or create index can fire DDL triggers because these operations modify the structure of your database rather than actual data stored inside of the tables. So in this series, we're not gonna cover DDL triggers in depth. However, it is still useful to know that they exist. When you create DDL triggers in SQL Server, you will typically find them under a specific node called programmability, and then inside of the database triggers subnode. I may create a separate playlist dedicated entirely to DDL triggers in the future. So, right now we have like a general understanding of triggers, right? So let's build a stronger mental model by comparing DML triggers with stored procedures. I assume you are already familiar with stored procedures. If not, I've got a playlist on that topic that you can watch. This comparison usually helps developers understand the purpose of each feature, much more clearly. And of course, not only stored procedures, but also constraints. Stored procedures, as you might know, are pieces of SQL code that you write once and then execute, whenever you need them. So in other words, the procedure waits until somebody explicitly calls it. Constraints are different. Constraints are rules that SQL Server automatically enforces all the time. For example, a primary key constraint or a foreign key constraint. So these are continuously, protecting the integrity of the data without requiring any manual, execution. Triggers sit somewhere in between of these two ideas, I would say. So a trigger is also automatic, but instead of, constantly enforcing a rule like a constraint, it reacts to a specific event happening inside of the database. For example, imagine that whenever a new record is inserted into a specific table, you also want to automatically insert a corresponding audit log record into another table. And that is a very common scenario when an insert trigger, becomes useful. Now let's, set up the database that we're going to use throughout the series. For this tutorial, we're going to create a sample project database called TaskFlow Pro Triggers Tutorial. And inside of the database, we're going to create different tables like users, tasks, and task history. The idea behind this setup that I'm talking about is to simulate a small but real-world application so that our trigger examples feel practical rather than artificial. We're going to create the database first, and then we're going to create different tables. So here in SQL Server Management Studio, I'm going to create a new query. By the way, I'm going to put all of my queries in a zip file pinned in the description of each episode so that you can download them if you want. So this is the command to create the database. So I'm going to execute that. I'm going to create a database now. The database is this one. And then after this, I'm going to create the tables. So as I told you, we're going to create different tables for now. So we're going to create the users table and the tasks table, and then the, task history table. So let's start with the, users table. As you can see from the schema, the users table contains some, simple user related information such as the user's name and whether the account is active or not. Then we're going to create the tasks table, and the tasks table contains the actual task records. So each task has fields such as a title, a status, creation date, and a reference to the user who created it as a, foreign key. Again, notice we have defined a foreign key relationship between tasks and users using the created by user ID column. This helps enforce referential integrity between the tables. And then of course, we're going to create the task history table, which we are going to, insert into using our triggers. The task history table is intentionally, as I told you, designed as a simple audit table. So its purpose is to store information about actions performed on tasks. For example, later in the series, we may store, information such as when a task was inserted, updated, or deleted, along with, timestamps and additional details. So this setup gives us, a realistic environment where triggers can provide actual value rather than just, demonstrating isolated toy examples. I'm going to execute all of these, and then I'm going to take you to my databases. Let me refresh here, and then I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom in, and yeah, this is the triggers tutorial database, TaskFlow triggers tutorial. So let's get started with the next part. I'm going to remove all of these. So we've got our tables right now. Let's start getting into our first real trigger, which is the after trigger. So an after trigger executes only after the SQL operation that fired it has successfully completed. And this is an extremely important, concept to understand because it affects how triggers behave inside transactions. One thing that many developers, do not initially realize is that triggers execute inside the same transaction as the operation that executed them, initially. So for example, imagine that we create an after insert trigger on the tasks table, meaning that when a new task is inserted, SQL Server needs to, insert another record into our task history. The thing is that when a new task is inserted, SQL Server does not treat that trigger as a completely separate operation running independently afterward. Instead, both the insert operation and the trigger execution become part of the same transaction. And that means if something, fails inside of the trigger, the entire transaction can fail or, roll back, including the original insert operation itself. And this let's say transactional behavior is one of the reasons that triggers can be very powerful, but it is also one of the reasons that they must be used carefully. In practice, this first type of triggers that I'm going to create after triggers are commonly used when we want to react to confirm changes inside of our tables. So for example, after a record is successfully inserted, or updated or even deleted, we may want to write audit records, enforce additional business rules, synchronize data, or perform other follow-up actions automatically. So let me go ahead and create the first trigger. It is an after trigger, an after insert trigger, and then we're gonna talk about the syntax because this is going to be the first time we're going to see a trigger. Take a look at the syntax, and then we're going to talk about this. The syntax is very intuitive, I would say. So very approachable. First, we start with the create trigger command, and then we kind of choose a name for the trigger itself. In our case, the trigger is called trg tasks after insert. After that, we use the on keyword, as you can see, to specify the table on which the trigger should be attached. So here we are attaching the trigger to the tasks table. Next, we define the trigger type. In this example, we're creating an after insert trigger, which means that the trigger will execute automatically after insert operations occur on the tasks table. And then inside of the trigger body, as you can see here, we kind of define the logic. This is what the trigger should execute whenever a new task is inserted into the tasks table. In our case, our goal is simple. We're going to insert an audit-like record into the task history table every time a new task is created. The insert statement inside of the trigger populates several fields, as you can see. These are the fields that we're going to populate in the task history table. So we store the task ID, the action type, the time of the action, and some additional details describing what happened. For the task ID, take a look at this portion. For the task ID, we take the ID of the newly inserted task record. For the action field, we insert a hard-coded value for now, with this value created. And then, we've got the action time. For action time, we call the get date function. So SQL Server stores the current date and time when the trigger executes. And for the details, we build a dynamic message by combining, a static text with the title of the task that was just, inserted into the task table. So all of this data comes from something called the inserted table, this table, which is one of the most important concepts when working with triggers. And I have, picked an alias for this inserted table. Let's talk about this table because this is kind of important when you are getting started with triggers. The inserted table is a special virtual table that SQL Server automatically provides inside triggers. So whenever rows are inserted into a table, SQL Server temporarily stores the newly inserted rows inside of this virtual table so that the trigger can access them. So in other words, the trigger does not magically know what rows were inserted, and SQL Server exposes those rows through the inserted table. In our trigger, we assign the alias I, as you can see here, to the inserted table so we can reference it and reference its columns, of course, more easily. One very important thing to remember is that inserted is a table, not a single row. A lot of beginners accidentally assume that triggers execute once per row, but that is not how SQL Server triggers work. A single insert statement may insert multiple rows at once, right? And all of those rows will appear together inside of the inserted table. So that is exactly why we are using this select statement here instead of assigning values one row at a time. So we are treating inserted as our virtual table like a normal table, because that is effectively what it is inside of the trigger context. And this details this detail becomes extremely important later that when we start writing more advanced and production grade triggers. So I'm going to execute this, by the way. So there is an issue, I guess. It says could not find a store procedure title. Let's see if we've got. There was a small, typo that I fixed, and then I executed, and now my trigger is available on my table. I'm going to show you the trigger here. So I'm going to refresh the database, and if I go to my task history table, I can see the triggers node here, and let me zoom out on the tasks, not task history. I'm going to go to my tasks table. So let me zoom in one more time, and then I'm going to go to triggers, and this is the trigger. So this is the after insert trigger that we just created. So we have created our first trigger, and now we can kind of test this. As I told you, DML triggers like after insert, for example, or after update, after delete, those are attached to the table on which you kind of create that trigger. In our case, that was associated with the tasks table. Now let's test everything and confirm that our trigger is actually working correctly. I'm going to insert a user into my users table. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to insert this into my table. And then after that user, inserted into my users table, I'm going to insert a couple of records into the tasks table. Remember, I've got a trigger on the tasks table. So for my insertions, I expect to see some records being inserted automatically by my trigger into my task history table. So let me go ahead and create this insert to add a couple of records to the tasks table. So those are inserted, as you can see. And now let's verify and see if we actually have some records inserted into our task history table. So I've got this other command, which we are going to use to select everything from the task history table. And take a look. We've got our insertions happening here automatically. So this means that the trigger, does work, and those insertions into the task history table are executed automatically because the trigger reacts to the insertion into the tasks table. And that is our, first real demonstration of a trigger reacting automatically to a database event. The important thing, I guess, is that we never manually inserted anything into the task history table ourselves. The trigger handled that logic automatically behind the scenes, immediately after the insert operation on the tasks table completed. And that was it for this first episode. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. If that's the case, make sure you subscribe to A Coder's Journey. Give this video a thumbs up. Stay tuned for the next episode. See you then.